Paid for by Save Juneau, P.O. Box 32142 Juneau, Alaska 99803 Molly Duval Chair. Top contributors Wayne Coogan, James Wilcox, and Robert Jacobson.
Hello, I am Alex Sargent, and today we are interviewing Joe Geldhof, another Assembly candidate, and you are doing area-wide as well. Is that correct, Joe?
Actually, I am running in District 1.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Which is
good.
You know, there's 2 people running at large. There's
yes.
2 people running out in District 2, which is pretty much the historic and scenic Mendenhall Valley and out the road.
Yes.
And then there's Douglas Island, downtown, I think the airport area, and everything down from the airport down to the downtown area.
Okay.
That's District 1.
District
and I'm running
1.
for District 1.
All right. So District 1. And first up, we're actually going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history here in Juneau.
Okay. In 2 minutes or less?
Yeah,
okay.
That would be preferred.
Well, I was born on an army post when my dad had some legacy service to the federal government during Korea. And from Korea, my dad was discharged at Fort Meade, made his way to Detroit with my mom and me, and a brother that we picked up along the way. 2 sisters born in the Detroit area. Went to school out in Michigan and then law school out in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I decided to move to Alaska, got off the ferry out at Auk Bay, the terminal, when it was brand new. And my wife said, I think there's a town here. We got in kind of late at night. And I said, I think there is a town. So that was in 1979. And we have loved living in Juneau since we got here. There are many opportunities here of which we've availed ourselves. You know, outdoor recreation. We love the trails, although we're not hikers anymore, we're walkers. But we walk
okay.
I think Juneau, by and large, is a great place to live.
Yeah.
And we've raised 2 daughters here, one of whom's still here, Claire, who's a public health nurse. Our other daughter loved growing up here, but she lives with her family down in the East Bay. So I've been in Juneau. I am a lawyer by trade. And I've done a lot of activities. I helped build the rink over in Douglas. They still let me sign up for skating. I'm a hockey player, as my wife says, a very slow hockey player. But I like this place that we call home.
Joe.
I think it's one of the most beautiful places in Alaska. And one of the reasons I'm running is because I think the local government should live up to the beauty and the opportunity that's here. And right now, I don't think that they are.
All right. And segueing into our next question, actually, that's perfect because we all love living in Juneau, but it is expensive. Save Juneau and Did You Know Juneau here is very concerned about the cost of living. What is one idea that Assembly could implement to lower Juneau's cost of living?
Well, I have to say, as an old guy, the cost of living in Juneau, since I've been here, and Alaska, and in most places in the north, is always fairly high. The transportation costs for getting in and out of here add to the cost of living.
Yeah.
There is a problem that most people think with housing stock here. Yeah. Housing is expensive. Frankly, housing is expensive in most places in the United States anymore. Yes. Urban areas, suburban areas, some rural areas, not so much. But housing has always been tight in Juneau, and it's always been expensive. The real trick is the city and borough going to do something about that besides wring their hands and hire housing coordinators? There are a number of things that we can and should be doing with housing, which I think is the biggest single driver of cost for people. And we should focus in on starter housing. We have an imbalance, in my opinion, in housing stock. You got a lot of old people who live part-time in Juneau, who are living part-time in 3 and 4 bedroom houses with 2.5 car garages, and that's fine. But in terms of younger people who are up and coming and trying to raise kids, what they really need is a starter house. And by starter house, I mean an affordable market affordability, which means maybe $2,300 or so. Can you build a house with 2 bedrooms and a bath and a half and maybe a carport on a fairly small lot that if you're a young woman who just gets out of the military and you've always wanted to be a firefighter, and can you get into that and live at the lower wages by a firefighter? Or can you be a miner who wants to have, a spouse and a kid up here in a 2-bedroom house? We need to have more of that starter housing that's maybe a notch above manufactured homes, but below the 3-bedroom house with a garage and detached, kind of bourgeois ideal that a lot of people think is their birthright around here. So I'm big on infill. I am big on aggressively moving towards affordable starter houses that people in their 20s and 30s can actually get a mortgage on. And it's not easy because mortgage rates are up, 7% now.
Yeah.
The city's done an inadequate job in actually addressing that. Yeah. What they do is there's a lot of talk. They hire people to talk about housing, but nothing gets done.
Right.
So.
Right. We're going to talk about that workforce because you kind of talked about mining or firefighting. At both the state and city level, as well as the private sector, there are tons of vacant open positions in Juneau's workforce. Why can't Juneau attract more people to live and work here? Or what is your opinion of why?
Well, before we get into the specifics of Juneau, I am fortunate because I work for people around the United States, in the Eastern time zone and the Pacific, and sometimes in the Central and Rocky Mountains. I live here, most of my work is here, but I have the benefit of traveling for work and pleasure all over the United States. And I'm not running for school board, but we need to, on the Assembly, encourage the school board, and I certainly support full funding for things like training. Not every young woman or young man who is in Juneau Douglas High School or Thunder Mountain is wild about getting an English degree or a political science degree and going off to, law school or something like that where you spend your time. They might have aptitude and interest in construction. They might have aptitude in English and any number of activities which are short-filled. Yeah. And there's no single solution. It's not just paying more, but it's creating a culture where work and engagement is rewarded. We can do a lot better to make a work environment at the city and borough of Juneau where people, if they don't leap out of bed, they hop out of bed and they're glad to get in their vehicle and go to work because they're engaged in meaningful work, whether it's maintaining the trails, whether it's getting the bills paid, whether it's plowing the streets. And one of the roles of the Assembly, and something I would bring, is elevating the elan, or the spirit of the workers, so that they're doing more than just working to the minimum qualifications, or working just to the collective bargaining agreement. We also have an elongated wage scale. Some of the top management around there are paid an inordinately high amount compared to, in my opinion. When you look at the total labor, and this doesn't mean they're bad people, and this doesn't mean they don't enjoy spending the money, but when you got people who their total labor costs are over $250,000 a year for their all-in total labor costs, and in some cases they avoid making decisions. That stuff has to stop. And there has to be a clear message from the Assembly that we want what I would say is a more fundamentally fair pay for the people who are doing the work. And not just throwing big money at some of the senior management.
Rolling into our next question, how do you see the roles of the Assembly member and the city manager, which is hired by the Assembly?
Well, the City and Borough Juneau Assembly has direct oversight over 2 individuals, employees. It's the city attorney, and we are fortunate right now. We have a good city attorney. We have a capable and engaged city attorney. And part of the reason I say that is because the individual attorneys and the staff that are in our law department are good. And they show up and they do their job. According to our charter, we have a strong manager form of government. The mayor is the mayor and gets to hold a gavel and preside over meetings, but the mayor, whoever she or he is, has 1 vote out of 9. The Assembly needs to be stronger and more resolute in setting policy and making sure that the managers and the management staff, the finance director and all the people who are hired by the city manager, adhere to the policies. So there's an issue here. Is the Assembly giving crisp directives? Are they following up and saying, 2 weeks later, how are we doing on issue X? And if you start getting pushback that, well, it's going to take another 3 months for us to see how it is, then you either say, well, 3 months is unacceptable. 3 days is probably too short. So how about 3 weeks? But we want a situation response on the desk in 2 weeks saying what progress we're making on this policy, and not perpetually roll things over.
Yeah, right.
We have a situation in Juneau right now where the senior staff clearly had an agenda about a big capital project, the city hall.
Right.
The city hall was advanced by the outgoing city manager. It's been a personal agenda with some basis in reality for at least 5 years that I can remember. What we have here is an agenda on the city hall that was beloved by a group of people in the management and the assembly, and they put it out for a vote, and it was turned down. And so now we're using public funds to re-educate the public on something they turned down. And I've been an advocate for 40 some years.
Right.
There was a case to be made about a new city hall. The city had an opportunity to make that case. They did not make that case. They're still not making that case. There is still no certainty about the total cost of the proposed new city hall. And my strong guess is that the proposal is going to go down again, and we'll be back to the drawing board, which is exactly where we should be. We did not take a considered look at alternatives to building the city hall that they designed. Here's the thing. They've allowed the downtown city hall to decay. The place is kind of a dump in some ways. Although they never seem to have a problem when I go in to pay my sales tax. They always take my checks. If I need something from City Hall, and the staff often, they're very nice. I need something notarized or something, they're cheerful, they know it. We're getting the job done. What we need to do is step back and figure out what we really need as opposed to what's desirable or desired on the part of a small group of people.
We're going to switch gears actually quick. Some 400 homeowners appealed their property tax assessment this year. Talk to us about property taxes and how you will tackle the property tax issue.
Taxation in order to meet public services is an issue in almost every jurisdiction in the United States. The number of people who grouse a little bit that they're overtaxed for insufficient yield is a common thread, and it has been for decades in the United States. That said, there was a failure on the part of the Assembly, though, to advocate for the citizens of this town.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like I was a math major. But if somebody like me can figure out the difference between an assessed value and market transactions and appraised value and reconcile those in a way that work for the city, that work for the property owners, that just work in reality, there's something wrong. That's the job of the Assembly, and the Assembly failed. It's not because they're bad people. It's because I think they were just afraid. They lost their nerve. They start deferring to people like the city manager and the city finance director, both of whom are out of here. They've quit. And they throw up their hands. That has got to end. We need people on the Assembly who will advocate for the citizens of this town in a responsible way, in an adult way. And you've got too many people down on the Assembly right now who, it's the most fun they've ever had since they lost the junior high government civics election. And now it's validating because they've been, elected a big cheese in a small town.
Yes.
I love this small town.
If you could make a promise, any promise, to the voters that you would swear not to break, what would it be?
I will promise never to abandon any of the citizens of this community, whether they vote for me or don't vote for me, because I have represented people, some in very difficult circumstances, for a lot of time. And I take the obligation of being an agent, being a representative, seriously. There's actually a little, under promise and over deliver is a good mantra.
Yeah.
It usually results in people being happy. It always results in people being satisfied. What's important is working for the citizens of this community and their general welfare, and doing it in an efficient and mature way. It means listening to the citizens at least twice as much or more as talking at them. My promise, as if I'm elected, is to listen to the citizens and then work hard to make sure that what they need, not what they desire, not some fantasy proposal, that they get it. They deserve to have the streets plowed. Am I committed to working with everybody, including the existing members of the Assembly? I will. I've always been a team player. But that doesn't mean I'm just a go along, get along guy. Citizens of this community deserve better. And I think if we let some new faces and get some new blood down there, we will get better. But if you're happy with the way things are, if you think everything's going great down at 155 South Seward Street, vote for all the incumbents. You'll get more of the same, and what you've got right now, I don't think is all that great. It's not horrible, but if you're happy with the way things are, don't vote, or vote for the incumbents, because you'll get more of what you've already got, which I don't think you deserve.
All right, that was a great summation there by Joe Geldhof, again, District 1 candidate. And I hope you learned just as much as I did. Thank you, Joe, for coming on. And
well, it's my pleasure. On this beautiful day.
On a beautiful day.
I'm going to go out and do some yard work.
Oh. And we're going to sign off. Thanks, guys.
Paid for by Save Juneau, P.O. Box 32142 Juneau, Alaska 99803 Molly Duval Chair. Top contributors Wayne Coogan, James Wilcox and Robert Jacobson.